What is up guys, Greedy Knight here talking about every change for Charge Blade in the Monster Hunter Wilds beta. I'll be going in depth about all of the new mechanics and my thoughts on this first impression of Monster Hunter Wilds version of Charge Blade. Let's get into it. The core Charge Blade moveset has remained unchanged with the exception of a few new moves. Sword and Shield is a copy and paste version of the 5th Fleet moveset. A new overcharge file mechanic adjusts how you go about gathering files. And Axe Mode is where most of the changes occurred in this version of Charge Blade. The biggest change is that Savage Axe is no longer part of the core moveset, now tying it to the new mechanics. The new shield charge can be performed after a foul load. You hold circle and the animation serves as a guard point. You can combo into your regular Sword and Shield inputs or morph to Axe Mode. The SAD option is useless since you just loaded your files into shield, so you would fire a blank SAD here. All of the risk and none of the reward. The new shield charge is a faster input than the regular round slash, so it is good for new combos. They replaced the side chop version of Element Discharge 1 with the diagonal overhead chop. It now has greater reach and a better angle than the old chop. However, you will always need to perform this new Element Discharge 1 chop before being able to perform the Element Discharge 2. This is a slight nerf because it forces you to perform an extra chop before getting to the valuable double chop. Also, you lose the morph into double chop combo and the upswing into double chop infinite combo from this change, eliminating two previous bread and butter axe combos. While I like the new move itself, the combo changes is what I disagree with here. We should be able to retain all of our axe combos from previous games, but just add in this new chop. You now have an Axe Mode equivalent of the Fade Slash. By holding backwards or sideways relative to your character with your triangle input, you can scoop backwards with a chop. The overhead chop mimics the Savage Axe chop from Iceborne, and the Element Discharge chop replicates a Switch Axe attack, while stealing its functionality from Longsword. It is a decent repositioning tool that allows you to attack while moving out of danger, but most of the time you should be using an evade if you want to avoid damage. This move just lets you look flashy while doing so. The Amped Element Discharge no longer morphs back to Sword and Shield mode like in previous games. If you input nothing, you will stay in Axe Mode, but you can now combo out of it with a morph, evade, vertical chops, the super, and the AED follow-up. Also, if you hold the Savage Axe input, it will now perform a buzzsaw during the Amped Element Discharge animation, increasing your damage output. However, the file only pops twice now instead of 3 times. Assuming the same motion values as in previous games, it would be a nerf, but if they redistributed the values so that the overall damage matches up, then it's a net 0 change. We will have to look at the math once the motion values come out. The AED follow-up can only be chained to an AED. However, you can combo into any axe input afterwards. This allows you to spam your axe bread and butter combos without hindrance. Its main purpose is to serve as a buzzsaw finisher, especially if you didn't want to commit to the super. The super amped element discharge can only be used after an AED or from a reaction based mechanic via guard, guard point, perfect guard, and power clash. It still consumes all files, overcharged or not, and cannot be cancelled into an AED, removing the cancel animation entirely. You can only cancel with the round slash, forcing the file reset via charging your shield or dumping your files, making it an all or nothing input. This is a net nerf to the super spam playstyle because you now rely on the monster to activate the shortcuts into the SAD or use the longer, riskier combo. By shoehorning in the AED into the super combo line, you burn a file to weaken your SAD and extend the combo by a somewhat lengthy move, increasing the risk of getting hit during the input or the monster just moving out of the way. It shifts the super spam playstyle from being proactive to reactive, taking a lot of control out of the player's hands. Your best bet now is to use the reaction mechanics for the quick shortcut, or to wait for the monster to go down before committing to the super. The mount finisher is a Savage Axe activation replicating the animation from Worldborn. You need to stab the monster enough times to create a wound, then you can perform the topple finisher with the Savage Axe activation. It will sheath your weapon once done. If you have files, it's best practice to move over to the head to get some stun built up, so you can KO the monster and extend the topple. Use your sacred to spam jump slashes. The Perfect Guard has much stronger guarding power to the guard point. In my testing, it was able to tank every hit with light knockback, even attacks that applied heavy knockback to the guard point. The only issue is that it is active during the shield jiggle frames, which is very few, so the timing is very tight. After the Perfect Guard flash, you then have all of your usual guarding options: evade, sword and shield attacks, morph, the super, foul loads, fade slash, and specifically the Savage Axe activation. By comparison, the guard point doesn't allow you to trigger Savage Axe, making it strictly a morph option or a super shortcut with an inferior guarding power. As a result, the guard point has been power crept by the Perfect Guard, especially if you consider that the guard point would incur the skill tax of guard investment, while the Perfect Guard would not. Power Clash is a threshold based trigger. You need to spam enough guards against the monster to trigger it, then you mash the stab button until it backs off, giving you the option to input a super or Savage Axe activation. It creates a free topple opening, but it relies on the monster to charge at you with its face to trigger it. In my runs, Balahar and Ray Dao did not trigger the Power Clash since they attacked with their appendages instead of their face. While this mechanic is very epic when you do trigger it, it might be very matchup based. All inputs can be aimed 360 degrees via focus mode. This is the most useful for aiming the super and your axe chops. Unless they add new settings for how focus mode can be aimed, you have to get used to using a claw grip to angle the right stick while inputting attacks, or use the target button to do a quick turn towards the monster. You apply wounds by focusing attacks on one part, but you can inflict multiple wounds on the monster. To see the wounds, you need to activate focus mode by holding it down or tapping it once, depending on how your settings are set up. If you hit a specific part enough, it will tenderize it visually, hit it some more to create a wound. If you strike the wound enough times, once created, it will destroy the wound. But if you use your focus strike, it will perform a Savage Axe activation and destroy the wound afterwards. Do note that the Savage Axe activation can miss and locks you in the animation once started, so mind your positioning when you go for the buzzsaw to maximize your damage. The attack itself does a lot of damage, so if you have a bunch of wounds on the monster, you want to spam your focus strike as much as possible for each and every wound instead of destroying them manually. Lastly, you can also use the focus strike to quickly morph from axe mode to sword and shield mode, mimicking the ready stance sword and shield morph. Wounding is a really good mechanic for Charge Blade because it bolsters Savage Axe quite a bit. You can overcharge files by stacking energy into them twice. Basically, you load your files once to fill them up, and then you load them up a second time to give them a Super Saiyan top hat to produce some effects. It increases the shield charge duration and the file damage for the SAED, consuming all files in the process regardless of charge state. You don't really have an incentive to overcharge files outside of loading them into your shield and until you activate Savage Axe. Based on the damage numbers for the super, overcharging files results in diminishing returns since it only goes up by about 25%. It would just be better to churn out 2 supers instead of pumping everything into one. Shield charge appears to be dropped from 2 minutes and 30 seconds to 2 minutes. When you load overcharged files, your shield lasts 5 minutes, which is the shield charge cap of previous games. Using some math, the basic file lasts 24 seconds, and the overcharged file adds 36 seconds, for a total of 60 seconds per file. It gives you the incentive to perform the extra file load for 5 minutes of charge versus 2 minutes, meaning you will recharge your shield less throughout the hunt. Savage Axe is roughly 2 minutes, identical to shield charge's base duration. It only activates from a mechanic based input through Perfect Guard, Wound Destruction, Power Clash, and Mount. Perfect Guard is the only one you can do on command by triggering it with a small barrel bomb. Savage Axe will apply extra spinning ticks by holding down the button and fixating on the point of contact like with Condensed Spinning Slash. Do note there is a sour spot timing for axe chops. If you connect your axe chop on the back end of the move, you get less or no ticks, so you want to practice spacing and timing your moves to maximize tick count. You will maintain the buff regardless of mode, similar to Iceborne's version of Savage Axe, but unlike Iceborne, it will not deactivate if you run out of files. In addition, element discharges will completely negate file consumption with or without overcharged files, serving as a reworked version of file regeneration of condensed spinning slash. AEDs will consume half a file with or without overcharged files. Because Savage Axe is no longer part of the core Charge Blade moveset, the biggest issue with Savage Axe is getting the first activation. It is best practice to use the small barrel bomb tech to activate it before the fight and then refresh it during the fight, so that you have maximum uptime. There are two new combos. The new shield charge combo is just faster by removing the shield thrust into AED round slash inputs, saving you a few seconds and instantly putting a shield in front of your hunter for safety. It is a good optimization on the shield charge combo and sets up your resources immediately. The basic buzzsaw combo got extended to now include the amped element discharge and the AED follow-up. It is an infinite loop but gains the most value when you have Savage Axe and overcharged files active, since you can perform the entire loop 10 times before needing to reload. You keep the Savage Axe ticks and file bursts active until then, allowing you to stay in axe mode for a long time. Overall, the Charge Blade has gotten quite the facelift, many optimizations, a bunch of new options, and a busted version of Savage Axe. Paired with the truly traditional version of Sword and Shield makes it one of the better versions of the weapon on release. Super Spam got shafted a bit, but I'll wait to see the element file side of things before delivering a final verdict on the viability of Super Spam. Like if this video was useful to you, consider subscribing if you want to see more Monster Hunter Wilds content like this. Comment down below your thoughts on Charge Blade or the beta in general. That's all I got for this one. Greedy Knight, signing out.